Well, to far na fáilte buamh go chuig olú agus go Ulster FleadhFest. And over the next 2 hours, we'll bring you the best of music, song and dance, which is vibrant today here in the province of Ulster. And FleadhFest is part of the national Cultists response to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And to start off, we're going to County Donegal in the company of Mairead Ní Mhaoine agus Mia Byrne. Fleadh Cheoil in sin agus tús bra cartha le cursaí ó Mairead Ní Mhaoine agus Mia Byrne agus clinnimuid chilú wuhu ar Balbag. Well, Cultists is stronger than ever here in the province of Ulster with 68 branches right across the 9 counties. Cultists was first established here in 1956, 5 years after the national movement. And today, branches are deeply rooted in their local communities. And we'll give you a flavour of that right throughout the next couple of hours. We now go to the Ards Peninsula for a performance from Ards CCE, and here we have a group of young musicians playing a selection of jigs. This year, Ulster Cultists commissioned a special suite of music to celebrate Irish culture within the province, and Michael Rooney has been selected to deliver that groundbreaking piece of work, and we'll hear from Michael shortly. But first, here he is performing on harp with a couple of subjects. Now let's talk about your music, Michael. Okay. And as part of a special commission by Ulster Cultists celebrating the province and its proud history, you've been commissioned to compose a suite of music. You're no stranger to composing suites of music, but tell me about this particular challenge.
I've written music for different occasions, and but for me this is home. This is me writing a suite of music for my own people. It's also a fantastic opportunity to work with these fantastic musicians in the 9 counties, and I'm really excited about it, and I think I'm very, very fortunate to get this opportunity to do so. With COVID and all of this, I think the sooner that we get back together to playing music, it can't come soon enough, and this will be a fantastic opportunity for young musicians to come together, number one. So from a social element, to try and recapture that. Number two, to actually work in an orchestral setting where they mightn't have worked before, and to learn a whole new set of disciplines, and to realise that their individuality has to be parked to a certain extent, and also to try and push them in ways where they might have been pushed before musically. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for them. I know it's a really good opportunity for me, and working with a younger generation just gives me so much energy, just gives me a sense of identity as well, that I'm not past it. I don't know if that makes sense. The younger the people you're working with, the more energy, and it's just fantastic to see the progress that they can make.
Kids lan leis an Ellen nar chaith me mohil. Kids lan leis na bana an crocus an slew. Kids lan hig na porch, porty crenes porter. Kids lan da hola, kids lan da go buan. Mowbray joga hui me go jibala here. Le donal mogile bajasker avi. De clan vronu orin trur magog is nien. Is bavinica an gaire na an grumen or heel. Ik carry gan a friend tranona jardine. Story me hegora Antonia nachli. Ach mochil is mochlemak, doch it jam were uin. August fire gan cor, babi ogin jaluan. Ta moire meni na mui cheer war. Eseki arahes le hulach movron. Ach mochri es me anem ni agi gojo. Anchak bega hoog donal mochile fado. Kids lan leis an Ellen nor chaith me mohil. Kids lan leis na bana an crocus an slew. Kids lan hig na porch, porty crenes porter. Kids lan la taola, slan la go buan.
Oraniacht bin Galanta Onager for Hascalan, who are from Gorchin at the foot of the Sparrow Mountains, where Irish was spoken right up until the latter part of the 20th century. And if you go to the other side of the Sparrows now, over in the Slaughtneil and Mahara area, Tashi Fui Vlah Arist Sechantershin. And in County Derry, there's a great tradition of music, song and culture, and we're going to hear some of that now. We'll go to the Loop, and this is the Mitchell family.
two gentle music men combine and lend an ear while I unfold the praises of a comely lady fair. The curling of her yellow locks has stole away my heart, and that I am sure would be the cure if she and I must part. The praises of this comely maid I am going to unfold. Her hair hangs over her shoulder like lovely links of gold, with carriage neat and limbs complete. She has fractured quite my brain. Her skin more fair than the swan that swims on yon furling stream. It was my cruel father, 'twas the cause of all my woe. He locked her in a closed room. He would not let her go. Her windows I did daily watch, thinking she might be seen, enough to catch another sight of the maid of sweet Garting. It was a few days after a hour he did profane. He sent my darling far away to a place I know not where. I will go and see my darling's eyes, where oft times I have been, and there in pain I will remain for the maid of sweet Garting. Now to conclude and finish, and take my pen in hand. John O'Brien, it is my name. Flower Hill, it is my land. Many days I've spent in merriment since my darling first I've seen, and her abode lies near the road, in a place called Sweet Gorting.
Fleadh Cheoil and sin, wonderful music as usual from the Mitchell family from County Derry, followed by a song from the County Down singer Kathleen Garland. And Cultists was established as an organisation in Mullingar back in 1951, and the province of Ulster have had a strong input into the workings of Cultists right throughout its existence. And we'll now look at some of the early days of Cultists here in the province.
I was born in 1944. I just came into the tail end of what was become a major transformation all over the countryside. A lot of the old traditions were dying out, and the people that I was meeting, my grandmother had been born about the 1870s. My mother was born in 1915, so that generation were just the last of that old style, where the old country dances, the Keeley houses, all that was very much just coming to an end, not quite to an end, but it was changing. There was two very important men from County Antrim, an uilleann piper called Willie Hope. He was from Ballinure in County Antrim, and a fiddler from Dunadry Bridge, called Davy Mcglinchey. And they, along with Leo Rolson, famous piper from Dublin, Jim Seary, quite a gathering of them, mostly from Dublin, but there were some from Cork and the Midlands, decided to have the first gathering in Mullingar in 1951 in the Midland Hotel. They were all in the one hotel. Then shortly after that, 1953, those two gentlemen, along with a lot of northerners, mostly fiddlers, because that would be the predominant instrument in Antrim and Down and Derry and Donegal and the northern counties, Tyrone, the rest were all very much the fiddler would be the predominant instrument for traditional music. They formed the Antrim and Derry Fiddlers Association, along with people like Alec Kerr from Larne. Well, he originally was from Skerry, near Newton Crumlin. Mickey McElhatton, Keen of the Glens. Jimmy Kerr, a brother of Alex, and various others. And they gathered together in halls of all denominations, and it was all denominations that went to these sessions and still does to this day.
The aims of that organisation was to promote country fiddling, as they would talk about, and it also had a strong link with the Scottish tradition. So they would have played Strathways, Highlands and that music, along with Irish traditional music. And then there was a liaison officer role was designed, and that was to be join the Ard Comhaltas, the executive Cultists, so that the two organisations would keep in tandem and the communication would be good between both. And it would start off with a fiddle player from Ballycastle, Frank McCollum, and then there was Doris Crawford, who and her husband Alex, and Doris was the liaison officer for a long time with Cultists. She actually was acknowledged by Cultists and got a gradum way back in the early 80s, and went from Doris to a gentleman called Billy McKee. My mother, Jeannie McGrath, was County Secretary for County Antrim Board, and she was also a member of the County Antrim and Derry Country Fiddlers Association, and in that capacity she attended all the committee meetings. And when Billy McKee retired from his post as liaison officer, then Jeannie was appointed in role and carried on in that role for 30 plus years. When Jeannie retired from that role, then I was given the task.
When you go back then into the other three counties, the main mover and shaker there would have been a man called Paddy Mcavanna. And Paddy would have been in Mullingar in 1951, along with the other people I mentioned.
It was Ribishin vid Sean McHenna, vi on Tus, vi Sean or Tus le Cultists. He was one of the founders of Cultists, and it was he and two other people from Scottstown, Eamon O'Murray and Paddy Mcavanna, they all came up with the name Cultists Culturi Éireann.
A lot of the inspiration for the growth of Cultists would have come from a younger generation, because sometimes the younger generation may not listen to the older generation, but there seemed to be an enthusiasm among the young for music.
The Belfast branch seems to have been the first branch in the 6 counties. I think they gathered in the Derravolgy Avenue off the Lisburn Road. People like Brian O'Donnell, I think, was the first chairman of that. He was also, I think, one of the early chairmen of the Ulster Cultists, Brian O'Donnell. And Frank McCollum used to drive down to, along with others, Jim McElhone and himself would have driven down for the sessions, for the crack down to Belfast. Because there was a whole nest of people that were working in Belfast. Sean McAloon, Ellen Piper came from Fermanagh, Tommy Gunn, fiddle player from Fermanagh. There was a whole gathering of musicians that were working in Belfast, and they used to meet apparently up in Derravolgy Avenue off the Lisburn Road. That was the 50s.
What a treat to listen to one of our great lilters, Seamus Fay, recorded at a session at Fleadh Cheoil here in 2012 in his native Cavan.
Porteract Bale den Skych and Shin, the wonderful lilter Seamus Fay, closing that deep dive into the rich Ulster tradition of traditional music. And Seamus Fay is from County Cavan, where there is a fantastically rich tradition in traditional music, and it was in Cavan where the All-Ireland flag came in 2010, 11 and 12. 3 in a row for Cavan. Martin Donoghue was the events manager for those 3 years. Martin, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much.
Before that though, Martin, what was the tradition like in Cavan? How central to Cavan culture was traditional music?
There was older players who passed on the music and the song, and there was a few dance teachers as well, but there wasn't that huge volume of teachers and players at that time. Even probably around Ireland, we would have looked to the radio and listened to stuff, and we would have listened to records, but there was a great amount of people interested. We had listeners, and they're nearly as important as players and singers.
So then what were the steps that were taken in order for Fleadh Cheoil na hÉireann to come to Cavan Town 10, 11 years ago at this point in 2010, Martin?
At that time, a great man called Jack Keys became county manager in the council, and Jack was a Kildare man. And somebody said to me one day in a cafe in Cavan, I think he used to know Donal Lunny and Christy Moore and Liam O'Flynn because he's from Kildare. So the brain started saying, wow, if he knows them boys, he'd like Irish music. So all of a sudden, I made some inquiries and talked to people like Jim McCauley, and he was a Cavan man that was involved with the Fleadh Kilkenny, and I talked to the Cultists people in Ulster here, and all of a sudden I was knocking the door of the county managers without an appointment and saying, any chance to talk to you? Came in the door and he'll tell you this himself. I says, I'm looking to bring All Ireland Fleadh to Cavan. Will you help me? And and he actually had lived in Tullamore during the Fleadh Cheoils and worked there. So he understood the language. And all of a sudden, here we were in 2007, 2008, planning to get an All-Ireland flag for Cavan, and it came in 10, 11 and 12.
Not only did the All-Ireland flag come to Cavan in 10, 11 and 12, but you know, Cavan, the Fleadh Cheoil in Cavan was special for so many reasons. It seemed like there was a new energy came to Fleadh Cheoil na Heron when it came to Cavan. You know, describe how you approached the event and planning the event.
So I knew in my heart from going to Fleadhs that there was lots of competitions, there was lots of street music, but there was a lot of people that would love to be entertained. They wanted to be entertained. And I was surprised after making trips to Tullamore and that they weren't using some of the larger venues throughout the week. I just said to myself, wow. And I knew there was a hunger. I knew there was thousands of people coming. We hadn't got our Facebook going like now, our social media in 10 or 9. But all of a sudden, acts were touring. And Cavan never had these acts. We never brought them in. They're not at that large one. So all of a sudden, the Clanas and the Yaltons and the Irvine, all of a sudden we were bringing Pádraig Rinne and his friends. We were bringing great acts down. And I said, if we get 1,800 seats in a dome, we can make money. We can pay the acts and also run the Fleadh. And that was agreed early on. Everybody bought into it. And all of a sudden, we did change what the Fleadh was to a lot of people. Because all of a sudden, these thousands of people on a Monday night could go to something. And that's what happened.
And when you look back now, what do you think of the experience of those three Fleadh Cheoil and what they brought to Cavan as well?
Well, I suppose the first thing you meant, the backbone of any Fleadh Cheoil, whether it's a local county Fleadh, a provincial Fleadh or an All-Ireland, is the volunteers. So we had to look for volunteers. And their memories, I think, are much more important than mine even, because I enjoyed it all. But a lot of them came to it because they were asked. The council asked people, the Irish language people got involved, Cultists branches in the county. When we originally looked, we had about 6 branches. During the time we grew to 11 branches, so much more interest. And Jack Key's kind of great phase, which was an explosion of interest. Well, there was an appreciation that Irish music was special. It made it seem special. For all of a sudden, this boy that used to go around the town carrying an accordion or going and putting on music on a St. Patrick's Day in the back of a lorry, and people clapped and said, that's lovely, you know. All of a sudden, you had these 300,000-400,000 people coming and playing day and night on the streets. And people were saying, wow, this must be great stuff. And they were educated. The Fleadh Cheoil educated people. The volunteers give freely, but they got something back they were able to share as part of a wonderful success.
Continuing our theme of musical families from the province of Ulster, you've just heard from the Maguire family from Derrygonley in County Fermanagh, and just before that you heard from a selection of seasoned flute players from County Cavan, from Cian Sweeney, along with Ellen O'Brien, James McGovern, Seamus Tierney and Barry Connaughty. And traditional music is alive and well in the Border region, there's no doubt about that. And now we want to celebrate the very strong singing tradition in the county of Fermanagh. So over now to the one and only Rosie Stewart.
Well, here I am from Donegal, I feel quite discontented to hear the way that we're on down not fairly represented. They say it is a general rule to make out Pat a knave or fool, but never mind, we'll play it cool and speak up for old Ireland. Do me justice, treat me fair, and I won't be discontented, and I won't be laughed at anywhere but fairly represented. When on the stage I do appear with me thundering big shillelagh, with me ragged coat and me tattered hat, you'd think I stepped out gaily. With not a word of common sense, they don't know when they give offence, but carry on at Pat's expense, just let them come to Ireland. Do me justice, treat me fair, and I won't be discontented, and I won't be laughed at anywhere but fairly represented. Now there's Mr. Punch with his literature, he tries to hurt us badly, for when he paints our caricature, he depicts us rather sadly. With crooked limbs and villainous face, he represents the Irish race. Indeed, it is a great disgrace, and we think so in old Ireland. Do me justice, treat me fair, and I won't be discontented, and I won't be laughed at anywhere but fairly represented. Now they say we're lazy and dirty got, but what's the use to grumble? For when they enter our Irish cot, they're welcome though it's humble. In public works the country round, and where hard work is to be found, in a railway tunnel underground, you'll find the boys from Ireland. Do me justice, treat me fair, and I won't be discontented, and I won't be laughed at anywhere but fairly represented. Now it's very true, I like a glass, it makes my heart feel frisky. I am very fond of an Irish lad, and I'm partial to the whiskey. I'm very quiet when left alone, I'll do what I like with what's my own, and a woe be to the foes of home who dare run down old Ireland. Do me justice, treat me fair, and I won't be discontented, and I won't be laughed at anywhere but fairly represented.
I didn't know the meaning of traditional or folk. It wasn't in the vocabulary until I was well into my teens. All I heard the old people talking about was old songs, you know, but it turned out they were what we call traditional songs and traditional singing. So I was listening to it from the very start.
We always sang it, you know, this is the, you know, typical story for anybody who sings, you know, their parents sang and their grandparents sang and they grew up with it. And that is true in my case. I did grow up with it. And I realised that my father actually had a lot of songs that I subsequently learned from him when I decided that I'd start traditional singing as such, you know. So I would have got songs from him, and he would have been a big influence as well, because he would have been very encouraged and he'd have been very pleased that I'd chosen this route, and he would encourage, you know, at all levels. The person who had the biggest influence on me is Roisin White. I met Roisin White at the Fleadh or August Ranka in where was Ballycastle, probably in the early 80s.
It was sometime in around that anyway that it started, and it was to bring the dancing traditions from all over there, and brought wonderful singers like of Geordie Hanna, Sir Anne O'Neill, Paddy Tunney, you name it, John Kennedy, etc., etc., etc. You had different people coming. There were some people came every year, but there was you did have a certain new blood coming in every year. So that was a wonderful gathering of people in Ballycastle.
Well, a lot of the influential singers, like people like Roisin White, and people like Len Graham, people like Paddy Tunney, I mean, all these people that I have mentioned, and there's a whole plethora, Mairead Walsh, Rita Gallagher, you know, the list goes on and on and on. They all have their own voice. You can't mistake them for anybody else.
There was all sorts of elements that contributed to the song tradition up here, the history, the geography, like with all sorts of songs. The hedge school was a big thing in both the Irish language songs as well as the English language songs. We find that whole system of internal rhyme and is carried on in the English song tradition as well. And I was singing in a place outside Ballymena called the Minnan, a small place. And one of the fiddlers came up to me and asked for the song. I sang one of my grandmother's songs and asked for the words. And I got his name and address, and that was Joe Holmes. He was there as a fiddler, not as a singer, but I soon found out when I came with the song to him that he was a singer of note and a singer of a large repertoire of songs, wonderful old songs that he'd learnt mostly from his mother. I just missed her. She had died in the 1950s, so that was 1963. And then there was other singers. But there's numerous singers. There's so many that Eddie Butcher. Shortly after that, I took Joe down to meet Eddie Butcher, and but outside of that, there was numerous singers. There's so many that if I start naming them all, at least some of them. Paddy Tunney, of course. Mm-hmm. I never met his mother, but Bridget certainly was a great singer. Sarah Macon was on the wireless. I met Sarah through the wireless back in the 50s. She was on the wireless every Sunday. We used to listen into a program called As I Roved Out, and Sarah was on. She sang the introductory song every week. As I roved out in the May morning right early, I met my love upon the way, oh Lord, but she was early. And she sang lilta doodle, lilta doodle, lilta doodle day, lilta day day, the heidel dumba day shall hand day. That's going back a bit. So that was on, and you'd hear singers from all over these islands singing in Scots Gaelic and Donegal Gaeltacht and Connemara Gaeltacht and the Munster Gaeltachts, and you'd hear fiddling and piper and different things every week. Mostly Seamus Ennis and Hamish Henderson and Peter Kennedy would be very much involved in that. Back in the 50s, that programme went out.
And how did the songs, or how is it that the songs have been passed down? Or can you pinpoint people who have been responsible for collecting traditional songs in Ulster?
Well, the major one, the biggest one actually would be Sam Henry. So that was he was collecting from 1923 until 1939. His song a week in the paper would appear. So that was another great source. You rambling boys of pleasure, give ear unto these lines I write. I own I am a rover, in rambling I take great delight. I place my mind on a handsome girl, and oftentimes she does me slight. My mind is never easy, only when my darling is in my sight. Down by yon Sally garden, where me and my true love do meet, I took her in my arms, and unto her give kisses sweet. She bid me to take love easy, just as the leaves fall from yon tree. But I, being young and foolish, my own true love's ways I could not agree. I believed I could gain her favour, but as time went by it was plain to see that my love was unrequited. Blind devotion made a fool of me. Must I go away broken-hearted, my darling girl no more to see? Or must I be false-hearted? Kind Cupid, won't you set me free? I wish I was in Belfast town, and my true love along with me. I would get sweethearts plenty to keep me in good company, with money in my pocket and a flowing bowl on every side. Hard fortune there would daunt me, and I'd be young, and the world is wide.
The renowned Len Graham with the Rambling Boys of Pleasure, delivered in his unique and definitive style. And we'll stay in County Antrim now, and we go to the shores of Lough Beg. And the Walls sisters, Molly, Jane and Cara, are no strangers to Fleadh Cheoil and festivals, and have had success at all levels. Here they are with a selection of reels.
probably standing out for me is the bringing or being part of the group that brought the Ulster flag across the border for the first time into the 6 counties. And that was in Omagh in 81, 83, and I was very privileged to be given the opportunity to chair the committee at that time. And those events stand out because they were breaking new ground. They were giving people the opportunity to join this movement, if you like, and connect with this movement. And they were significant in developing the rationale and the ethos of Cultists. Over the years, I have seen that we have now become totally turned the clock around. I'm totally proud of our culture. Cultists as a movement, goes far beyond the card-carrying members. It's a spillover into, members and branches are so important to the organisation, but the spillover into the local community is a Cultist spillover, and it is what feeds the whole drive for promotion of culture and the adherence and the love of culture.
Well, at the time Dunulla started, it was very important because at that time it gave Cultists a centre within Ulster.
Well, I was very privileged, I suppose, to have been a founder and first leader of the project back 1983, I think that was. And it came about, I suppose, at a time, when right across the world there was a new emphasis and a new focus and a new awareness about the importance of cultural identity. Once the project started to emerge from the ground, if you like, there was an awareness that this is real, something that is happening here, and it's not just a dream any longer. And there was an immense inpouring of support, voluntary support. The voluntary movement was absolutely crucial to it. And I suppose the return the voluntary movement got out of it was that, look, we're doing something for our culture here. We've been very much appreciated by the community in doing that. And indeed, it was a springboard to develop what they had been doing in a much smaller way throughout the province.
Dunulla at the minute has sort of changed from a sort of a venue perspective to something that we're trying to create anyway, which is the home for Cultists. And I think all organisations need that sort of tangible home, that area, that place that they can call their space. And one of the things that we have found through the work that we've been doing over the last number of years is that, we work very heavily with the Royal Scottish Pipe Band Association in Aon Burrows there, and the music that the bands are playing is the same tune as you'll hear in a session in, say, Donegal or in Omagh here or anywhere, but it's just maybe has a different name, but it has started to evolve with a different meaning. The outreach work that we're doing through the centre, the outreach work that we're doing through Ulster Cultists, it's very important, and it will have a lasting legacy.
We have everybody from all aspects of our community in the branch, but we've always been involved in local community concerts that involve maybe music groups from different parts, and we just were involved with the Peace 4 project, for example, there.
In the early years of the Fleadhs, there wasn't that much organisation with bands. You might have had one band at a county fly, you might have had 2 bands. There was no such thing as a competition because there was no bands to make a competition. That situation continued on up till probably the mid-80s. We were looking at Cultists in that very early on. Jerry Whelan of Curtill, Fonzie knew of Money Lass, Paddy Mcglinchey of Rasharkin, and the late Sonny McDermott, all those men are deceased now, but Sonny McDermott, they got together and formed a committee that ran the marching bands.
Agus tá an landowin sin on, agus ag taistal ar fudan cuige going about the province. It's remarkable to hear the amount of Irish, especially among the young people, and it comes out so forcibly at the Fleadh. We've been around ag Mullu, ag na Fleadh ar fudan cuige, agus ribh seo bhí na daoine ó Donegal, bhí siad ar Yawas, but now the standard has risen all over the province. Agus sílim bhfuil barú fin Gaelic, agus tá daoine tuilsnach lórsat leatas Gaelic, bhfuil fecinn siad tosé caint ag teacht agus diagait. Gaelic siimplí díos miragait tá na freagaí go léireacha, agus tá sin ionach.
I don't think Cultists would survive without the volunteer work that is going on within Cultists. It's vital. Sonny McDermott was a figure within Ulster. I think he held almost every position within the Ulster Council, and he was there at the setting up of the Ulster Council.
Sonny was a one-off. Sonny, if you had Sonny involved in something, you could be sure that he would be there to do it, and do it to its full potential. Sonny's idea of doing something, he would have organised 2 or 3 days beforehand. He was one of the greatest characters ever I met, and he was a wealth of knowledge. Sonny lived Cultists and loved it.
He was a great loss to Cultists. He was always a volunteer that would have worked tirelessly for his own branch. Didn't matter where it was at or how it was, and if you needed advice, there was nobody better to go tell than Sonny. I'll never be another Sonny McDermott, nor there'll never be another Sonny McDermott within Ulster.
Monaghan well represented there from Monaghan-based musicians, Padraig and Sabina McGovern, along with Donal and Shanna McCaig. Well, we all know the last almost 18 months has been extremely difficult for everybody. Cultists has definitely played its part in local communities, reaching out especially to those who are isolated and finding things tough and trying to get through the last 18 months together. And we're particularly proud of Cultist members and musicians who have been working on the front line during this COVID-19 pandemic. And we're joined by a group of them here today. And now I'm going to speak to Dr. Paul Mcglinchey in your professional capacity, Paul. I'm not talking about music just for the time being, but can you give me just an overview of what the last 18 months has been like for you working on the front line in the medical profession?
It's been very challenging, Lynette. I think there's been a whole range of emotions over that period of time. I think at the very start of the pandemic, I think people were very energised about dealing with it. We thought in many ways this was going to be a short-term approach to things, and one of the big challenges was about actually changing the whole way we did our work and did our jobs and how we provided care for patients. And after a while we saw that we went from one surge into another surge, and it became a bit long and it became hard, and we had to rely on each other and rely on our family and our families and our friends in order to help ourselves through it. But you know, I'm delighted to say at this stage looks like we're coming to the end of it, and we can see light at the end of the tunnel. So,
And usually, Paul, you know, whenever you're finding things hard at work, you know, music must be such a great release for you. But without the social setting to go to a session, you know, festivals, Fleadh Cheoil, all that sort of thing, it was all taken away from you. So what kind of importance did music take on during the pandemic for you?
Well, you talk to any of the folks here and they'll tell you about how important music is in their life, and about how it's, like, you talk about a pressure valve, whatever, you know, it's just something that's a very intrinsic part of all of us.
How important do you think that sort of organisation was during this pandemic? Did it take on new importance?
Well, sometimes the worst of times brings out the best in people, and Cultist people are great people, and we've seen, you know, real practical actions or acts from what they've done over this pandemic, where they've, you know, contributed in a real practical way to help their communities through this.
And now, you know, we're beginning to hear music again, even though there's not many of us here at this recording. It's still amazing to hear the tunes been played again, Paul. Can you see light at the end of the tunnel and that coming back into our lives?
I felt such joy today, Lynette, just to be able to play a few tunes with people, you know, for the first time in 18 months. And I think we really can see it, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I'll let you take your seat with the rest of your NHS colleagues, and thanks to all of you for everything you've done for us all during the pandemic. We're very, very grateful and delighted that we have representation here from the NHS frontline as part of Ulster FleadhFest. So let me introduce you to the band. We have Melanie and Paula Houghton, we've Ronan Warnock, Ryan Hackett, Owen McKee and Paul Mcglinchey, our Ulster FleadhFest NHS group. What about our Ulster FleadhFest NHS Cultists group? Brilliant, weren't they? And you've just heard from the Donegal sisters Melanie and Paula Houghton, along with Paul Mcglinchey, Ryan Hackett, Owen McKee and Ronan Warnock, all serving within the health sector. Great stuff altogether. Now more fantastic music, and this time to the emerging button accordion style from the Tyrone Fermanagh region. And John McCann is from County Fermanagh. Here he is playing the leveret into Nell Davies. Stylish and full of personality. John McCann there from Co in County Fermanagh. Agus inis tá Birch I Mchaiteachta a ríis dar Hollywood woohoo ag tús a chláir. I'm delighted that back now with us is Mairead Winnie and Nia Byrne. Where you're welcome. Fáilte of Birch.
Thank you.
Just Rebecca and Shaw. Agus is stoich ag recording Lord Sharon Idleiracht or dús a Mairead. We've just heard you perform fiddle music, and you're one of the best exponents of Donegal fiddle music now in recent years, Mairead. Donegal fiddle music, though, it is so special. Why is it so distinguished as a style?
Well, it is. It has a distinctive style, and I think you have to look at the geography of Donegal as well, because you know, long ago it was very inaccessible because of the Derryveigh mountain range, and also even within Donegal it was very hard to go from parish to parish because of lack of just infrastructure. So therefore it was very good as regards styles and unique styles of fiddle playing, and that kind of giving it a language of its own. So you have this Donegal style, but then you have regional styles within Donegal as well, which makes it actually more interesting again.
Because we do forget Donegal is a huge county.
It's a big county, and you know, you'd have the likes of the Dohertys who lived southwest Donegal, and I was lucky enough to have met them. But my father now wouldn't have met them. He would have heard about them years prior to that. Right. And you would have had the likes of John Doherty maybe travelling to Rannafarshte for a night, and local musicians would have heard him then. But you know, there was that kind of distance always, but people would have heard of the very good players. And my father would have been listening to the likes of Neely Boyle from Cronashallag outside Dunlow. And he composed Seansa Cheoil, and he also composed The Moving Clouds. So these tunes are staple tunes now in the tradition, but he was the local big fiddler, I'd say, at the time.
How significant is the influence of Scottish music in Donegal? We know that there are huge connections between Donegal and Scotland going back for generations, for hundreds of years, Mairead. But how has that left its mark on Donegal fiddle music particularly?
Yeah, well, if you look at the word Scot, Scot means Irishman, so that's very significant in that connection with Scotland. It goes to medieval times when actually there was that Gaelic society, it was like our next door neighbours, and that kept going in Donegal because the people of Donegal would go to Scotland. And actually my grandmother was born in Glasgow with two of her parents, you know, her parents were from Gweedore. So I remember her looking to go to find her birth cert when she was of pension age here in Ireland, and she knew exactly where to walk to in Glasgow. But if I brought her to Dublin, she wouldn't know anything about Dublin. But Glasgow was like our second home for us there. So therefore, the music as well, like the seasonal labouring, going over there, the tatty hookers and they'd be there working on the electrical dams, you know, the hydroelectrical dams. And they started bringing back songs and tunes, and that's where the Highlands would have been played. But you would have heard the Highlands all over Ulster, not just in Donegal, but Donegal people, like, that's one of the first dances I ever learned was the Highland.
The Highlands, and you've recorded many since, Mairead.
Oh, and I'll dance one for you.
I wouldn't put that past you. And Nia, what's it like then for your generation coming to all this music? You know, you have it on tap with your mother, obviously, and, you know, generations of your family who are fantastic musicians from all over the county of Donegal. But do you find yourself accessing music on the likes of YouTube? You know, do you source things online? How do you go about it?
Yeah, well, there's a young group called the Crannog in Gweedore, and Mum sometimes teaches us and stuff, and like there's about 14 of us that all play music together around the same age, and we go to the Fleadh and stuff like all together. And we were in Germany as well doing a few gigs, so it's great that music helps us travel and like it gives us lots of opportunities.
Yeah, there seems to be just an injection at the minute in Donegal amongst your age group, and you're coming forward now as a force to be reckoned with in the world of traditional music within Ulster and Ireland. And you know, what's it like, I suppose, Nia, for your age group not to have the Fleadh Cheoil at the minute? Are you harking back to the memories of days gone by?
Yeah, we're all very sad now with the lockdown. I know like tons of people are putting up stuff on social media. Looking back, we wish we were back there and all.
A great example of the Donegal fiddle style and tradition being passed on from generation to generation. Mairead ní Winnie agus ní Byrne and sin among Cheoil looking. And we'll move now from Conde Gunanal go Conde Heroin. And again, we'll see the music going down from generation to generation, and a long-standing tradition in this family on the Loch Shore of the traditional singing. And now we're going to hear from Niall Hannah.
Ye lovers all, both great and small, of learning you've had your share. Your genius bright helped me to write the praises of a comely fair. Your poet's mind with me combine, assist me and lend your aid. Your voices raise, help me to praise my lovely Ballyronan maid. One evening bright in the moonlight, I went my darling to see, and being dressed all in my best, I thought addressed this comely she. Says I, fair maid, if you consent, we'll join our hands in wedlock state. If you prove so kind to ease my mind, my lovely Ballyronan maid. She says, young man, I must refuse a single life I quite enjoy. My heart's content, I pay no rent, and marriage I do quite deny. Well, if you won't marry me, and you're sure I cannot you persuade, I'll go my way, no more to see my lovely Ballyronan maid. She says, young man, I pray be calm. Those words I spoke were only in jest. Since since I have proved you pure and true, since I have put you to the test. In wedlock bands we'll join our hands, our happiness won't be delayed. Now the time draws nigh when I'll enjoy my lovely Ballyronan maid.
He really is a unique and special talent. That's Niall Hanna and his version of the Ballyronan Maid. And while we have so many fantastic individual musicians in the province of Ulster, we're going now to a tradition that has seen a massive regeneration in recent years, and that's the Keeley Bands. So when there was dancing here in the 40s and 50s, the Keeley Bands had amazing popularity within the province. And then in recent years, the long-standing tradition has come to the fore once again. So the first Keeley Band to bring the coveted All-Ireland trophy back to the province of Ulster was the Pride of Erin, led by Sean Nugent.
The Pride of Erin was formed under my late father's leadership, Sean Nugent, in 1960. The original band, the only one original person who came from the older Pride of Erin, as we called it, was Francie Murphy. But Dad put it under a new leadership in 1960, and it was quite a new lineup. And they won their first Ulster title in 1965. So that's how long, far back, the Pride of Erin are going under my father's leadership. In the very much traditional style. And there were no gimmicks for Dad and his Pride of Erin. They were true to the tradition and true to the style, and their rhythm, I think, and their flute and fiddle sound was unique, I think. And their marching, I have to say, their marches, they played lovely marches. There's such a legacy, I think, that they've left behind. And certainly, not alone here, all over in different areas.
It's very clear that the Pride of Erin were the standard bearers in Ulster at the time, in particular Sean Nugent, a sort of a mythical feature and a hero. How do you go and win All-Irelands in senior Keeley Bands? Because it's not just about the musicians, it's about creating this style, and it was also new to me and I was really fascinated with it. But I suppose for me, the Pride of Erin would have been the only band that I would ever have even associated with Ulster ever being capable of winning All-Irelands, which they did. But things have changed since.
The Knockmore Keeley Band was formed in 2008, and I suppose what was happening at that time, there was a group of us youngsters playing music together, running to Fleadhs, running to festivals, wherever there was a car going, and it was really built on friendships over that time. And it was important to us to play music from the Fermanagh area and from Ulster. Growing up in such a rich area of music with great composers, it just seemed important to include them in our repertoire, and we played tunes from the likes of Kevin Loughlin from Belleek, who was an accordion player. Our music teacher Seamus Sweeney from Ballyshannon, he'd wrote a few tunes, we played things of his. And then the Pride of Erin, who were the last Keeley Band to win the All-Ireland from Ulster. It's a bit like the GAA, it reminds me very clearly, I remember in 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94, when Ulster won those, 4 All-Ireland titles, they learned how to do it. And suddenly they got it, they knew what it was. And I feel that in the noughties there, particularly that, with the Knockmore and the Blackwater, that they just had the belief. And I mean, you'd be surprised, belief goes an awful long way, because it's not necessarily the best musicians in a band, but the drive and their own creation of style. When you hear these bands in Ulster now, you know exactly that they're from Ulster, and you know exactly what part of Ulster they're from. So that's a massive credit to them.
So I suppose the Blackwater Keeley Band was founded back in late 2014. I suppose initially it was for the means of competing in Fleadh Cheoil. So you would have started out competing at Tyrone county level, progressing on to Ulster, and then hopefully progressing on to the All-Ireland. So that was the intention initially, as well as providing entertainment to local Keeleys and festivals and events. So started competing in 2015, and we're lucky enough to qualify to the All-Ireland every year. Came second in 2017, and then in 2018 we were lucky enough to take home the title. Our unique selling point is that we're an Ulster Keeley band. All of our members are from the province of Ulster. A large contingent of them are from the county of Tyrone. So we would have been aware of the old bands of Ulster in the past, I suppose, thinking about the Pride of Erin in the 80s, and then fast forward to 2014 when the Knockmore won in Sligo. Such a great achievement for them and for Fermanagh. So I suppose there was pedigree there, and we wanted to follow in their footsteps as well. It's been a great opportunity after such a long hiatus to perform again together. It really does mean a lot to us today. So it's been very special to play again, and long may it continue. Hopefully we'll get more gigs and performances together now once we come out of this pandemic.
Fantastic music there from the 2018 All-Ireland champions, the Blackwater Keeley Band. Well, now we're going to focus on the cultural powerhouse that is the city of Belfast, and Belfast was the first home to Cultists in Ulster as well, and it has a long and colourful history of artists and a range of traditions as well, and we're going to focus now on one of the ancient traditions of Ulster, which is the tradition of the harp. And to do that, I'm joined by Lauren O'Neill, who is a harper and a researcher. Hello, Lauren.
Hello, Lynette.
Just to echo. Well, when we talk about the harp, I suppose, in terms of Belfast, we think of 1792. Can you tell me of the significance of that Harp Festival?
Well, firstly, it's right to say that it's probably not, I'm not capable to put into words how significant that year was. As many people will know, the harp was in a very delicate state of practice at that time, and many of the harpers were growing very old, and it was definitely, you know, in a state of decline, I suppose, at the time.
And thanks to Edward Bunting and the music that was collected at the 1792 Harp Festival, you're going to recreate some of that music today. Can you tell me what you're going to play and who joins you, Lauren?
Well, I'm delighted today to be joined by Eilish Lavelle and Grania Meyer, both established harpers from Ulster, so it's great that the three of us have been able to come together, and it's really special. We've chosen a tune, Carolan's Concerto, not only probably one of the most well-known and acclaimed harp pieces in traditional music composed by the great Turlough Carolan, but also this piece was performed in 1792, so a special marker to remind us of this great festival in 1792.
An excellent interpretation of Carolan's Concerto there from Lauren O'Neill and Grania Meyer and Eilish Lavelle. Well, we wanted to include some of our diaspora who've been living away from home during the pandemic in Ulster FleadhFest. We're calling them our Cultists diaspora. Many of our friends and family have had to face the pandemic thousands of miles away from home. So as part of a special link up, I caught up with some of the Ulster Cultist diaspora living overseas. Arlene McCarroll and Adele McBride, how are you doing?
Good, Lynette, how are you?
Not so bad. Great to see you. No stranger to music here in Ulster, but living abroad at the minute with Melbourne and Sydney joining us. But can you tell me, Arlene, I'll go to you first. What's your experience of, how your musical connection to home has remained strong through the pandemic?
Yes, so we're just over here now about a year and a half, Lynette. It feels long in some ways and short in others, but definitely the Irish music has been a big help. We were able to play music in the house and things like that, or even sending wee clips home to our parents and things like that, which was lovely. And then as restrictions has eased and we've been able to go out and play a bit of music, we've got to meet a lot of musicians from all over Ireland.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? It's just that taste of home. And what about you, Adele? You're in Sydney, and how have you kept the culture going through the pandemic and while you're away from home?
In 2019, we actually formed Cultists Sydney. So with that, we formed it with others, a few of us within the branch, and we organised different events throughout the year. But unfortunately, then COVID happened and it was fairly quiet. But in May, just past there, we actually organised Sydney Fleadh, and that was a fantastic 3-day event.
There's a strong Ulster Cultist diaspora right across the world. So Arlene, with that in mind, do you have something special to bring us?
Yes, so we've come together as a diaspora, a group of musicians consisting of Ulster musicians that are living abroad. So I'm excited to tell you that we've got, well, myself and Fimber McCann here in Melbourne, Christopher Conway, Adele McBride, and Elaine Monaghan up in Sydney, Kieran Martin over in New Zealand, and Barry McGee in Luxembourg. So we've come together to create a little montage of music for you all to enjoy.
Fantastic. I can't wait to hear this. Adele, Arlene, thanks a million. And now it's over to the Ulster Cultist Diaspora Group.
fine flute playing indeed from Martin Meehan. Well, anish to Keshta Gomarov, will fun dice Arif. Well, we're going to have some dancing now on Ulster FleadhFest, and as well as the best of musicians and singers, the province isn't short of a dancer or two either. And we're going to bring you an archive performance now from Fornia Rinka Winyahan, and this performance is from Fleadh Cheoil na Heran in Ennis.
Taking third place in the ladies' 8-hand Keeley Dance at Fleadh Cheoil na Heran 2016, Fornia Rinka Winyahan from Monaghan.
Fornia Rinka Winyahan in Mondaisa and Shin agus nach Intachéad, and wouldn't it just be great to see dancing like that live and in person again, so hopefully it's not too far away. So we're thinking back to Fleadh Cheoil in days gone by. That's all we can do this summer, and one Fleadh Cheoil that comes to mind is 2013 when Fleadh Cheoil na Heran came to Dirach for the first time ever, and Brendan Siobhan Malloy played a big role in making that happen. You and many others, because it took such a team to make that brilliant Fleadh Cheoil come together. But Brendan, could you paint a picture for me of Derry pre-2013? You know, what was the culture and the tradition of traditional music like in the city and county before that?
Well, I mean, the Derry City branch was, at the time, was coming up to its 40th birthday. So there was a great history of cultists and traditional music and culture in the city. I mean, you can go back to the times, I'm showing my age here, of the great pipers. Go back to the time of Brian Stafford, Finbar McLaughlin, Sean McCarran, all All-Ireland champions. A great piping tradition in the city. They were a great dancing tradition, great Keeley dancing and Keeley Band tradition, where you would have had Dennis Heaney and George Kilkey and the Keeley Bands. That's where I started at a Keeley Band at 12 years of age. You go back to the music. They were great music, and there was great tradition with the language. I remember the first tour in Gaeilge at the branch when I joined Cultists first. The late Father Jack Gallagher, who promoted the Irish, and they had an Irish mass in the city every Sunday, in the 70s, and really promoted the Irish language. And the Donegal connections were there. And then you go back to the White Hara, Danny McLaughlin. So many friendships were forged, and many styles and traditions shared. So, because we're bordering with Donegal there.
Oh, the tradition is definitely there. So, but then talk me through the process of bringing, the biggest festival of traditional music in Ireland and the world to the city of Derry back in 2013. What needed to be put in place practically in order for that to happen?
Well, the first thing was needed was support and to get the event. I mean, it's a major event, and we had to get people on board with the likes of the City Council, the Chambers of Commerce, the politicians.
Was it a hard sell, Brendan?
It wasn't a hard sell. It was an education, and I mean, in fairness, Cultists gave us a lot of help, and I mean, especially the Art Corla have to be congratulated, because nothing was any bother. If anybody had any questions or that they needed answered, the people of Derry and within the branch felt it was just the time was right for it to come, for the Fleadh Cheoil to come north to the 6 counties.
Honestly, the atmosphere was electric to the point of it being palpable. I remember, for example, Uachtaráin Michael D. Higgins at the official opening ceremony.
On the Sunday evening.
And just looking into Guildhall Square and the thousands upon thousands of people who were there to see him, and the buzz around the city. I mean, that was just such an amazing start to what was an amazing Fleadh Cheoil. The appetite was sharpened from 2013, and I think there's a whole new legacy now of young people and artists and enthusiasts who are going to carry that legacy on.
Well, we're almost at the end of this session of Ulster FleadhFest, and we hope you've enjoyed it. But we can only bring you a sample of the fantastic music, song and dance that this province has to offer. And there's much more available on the Cultists YouTube channel, so check that out when you get the chance. So now a question for you. What does the future hold for Cultists and for Irish culture here in the province of Ulster?
There are great infrastructure. There's a great infrastructure in place here within each county. It's part of the DNA now, the same as the GAA. I see Cultists and the GAA very, very similar. It's just there.
Because Ulster music is quite strong at the minute, I think we very much will have our own style, our own songs, things to celebrate. The standard of Irish traditional music in Ulster is incredibly high, and it's amazing to see, and it's a credit to all the people who are doing the work on the ground, and especially to the children who are putting in the work.
Well, I gul hon tusaí tá an ceol agus ar gultar faoi bhleach go háirithe a másc na daoine óga, agus is cinse le rá go bhfuil an ceol agus an tradition a lig slán sábhailte faoi na gúram.
Future is very bright when you only have to look at the local cultist groups and organisations. The standard of musicianship is just amazing. I think it can only go from strength to strength when you look at the youth coming up. I think the period of hiatus there will probably give everyone encouragement to get out and play even more. So I think it's going to come back bigger and better than ever.
is meise lerás ó Marco, áirtsteorathóir Cultists Ceoltóirí Éireann. Agus tá mé ag labhart libh ó Chultúrla na hÉireann I Mleach Lia. Chun sé an áthas ar fad armán, chuí seo a bheith gom chun tréas lú libh, tá an obair déanta goibh le blianta fada anuas, agus inis tá FleadhFest. It's great to have the opportunity of speaking to you today. I'm very conscious of the great work you've done down through the decades in promoting our cultural traditions. I compliment the Ulster Council, the county boards and the branches and the members, and indeed the pupils and all the musicians and singers and dancers, all who have worked together to ensure that our culture would be vibrant in the years to come. And now FleadhFest. FleadhFest in a way indicates all you've achieved over the years, and it gave you an opportunity of telling that story to the wider world. And what a great story it is. It's inspiring, it's uplifting, it's creative, and all of you who have been associated with this, we owe you a great debt of gratitude. So in years to come, when we look back on the FleadhFest videos, and I can see them going online every week now from every county and province and across the world, but in years to come, when we look back on those, we'll remember the way we met the challenges of COVID-19, the way in we came forward with new ideas to ensure that the music would stay alive. You in Ulster have played a major role in doing that. Gora míle maithagibh, agus go merin mí bio ag an am seo a ríis.
Míle buíochas le hartsteorathóir Cultists Ceoltóirí Éireann Liaras ó Murchu, and thanks also to the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sports and Media for their continued support of Cultists Ceoltóirí Éireann as well, and also thank you to the Arts Council of Northern Ireland for their sponsorship of this very production. We're at the end of Ulster FleadhFest. We really hope that you've enjoyed it. Thanks a million to the cast, the crew, the contributors, the musicians, of course, everyone here at the Strela Arts Centre in Omagh, and the production committee, a new committee for Cultists created because of the COVID pandemic. That's it from us. Thanks very much for watching, and until next time, Slán agus Bannacht. We're going to leave you with Blackwater Keeley Band and a lively selection. Slán.
so